Hello everyone and welcome back. In this video we have a few goals. First and foremost is, if you remember in the last video, we got our Flash message displaying on the login page, but by doing so we borked our entire application so that no other page will load. So our first step is to actually unbork it by passing this message to all of our routes. Then we're going to add some basic styling to our Flash messages using Bootstrap Alerts, so it's not just ugly text on the screen, it looks like an actual message. And then we're going to add some logic to differentiate between the message types, such as error or success or info or whatever. So step one is to pass the message to all of the routes. So to do that, we need to come into app.js. And if you remember, we have done something like this previously, where we passed the user to all routes down here in the, current user middleware config. Yep, this is it right here. By setting res.locals, we were able to pass variables or information to all of our routes. And we're going to do the exact same thing with our Flash messages. So res.locals.message equals request.flash. And then also right now our comment here says it's the current user middleware config. That's no longer accurate, so we'll just call this the state config. If you're not familiar with the concept of state, you should look it up. It's an important concept in software development, especially if you're doing anything with applications that have to do with user input, especially if you do things like games, use state a lot. Anyway, that's outside of the scope of this course though, but it's a very interesting concept. So we're passing that in, so now let's save it, and then we can go to our running URL import and open it up now. I forgot to start my server first. cd into Yelp Comics and then no daemon. Make sure I didn't fat finger anything. So now it's running. Let's refresh. We go in here and now it works again. And you'll see here up at the top we have object. Now obviously this is not what we want, but we'll get there. We'll get there, don't worry. So now we have unborked our application, and now that we're passing that, we can come into our auth routes and stop passing in this right here, because it's being passed in by default. And if we leave that there, it actually won't work, because the first one will read it, and then this next one will overwrite that with nothing. So to demonstrate that, let's go to comics/new, and we still get this. We get this object, and that's fine for now. We'll deal with that in a bit. But before we deal with that, I want to go ahead and make this and style this a little bit so it's not just random text tossed on the screen. I want it to be a cool little header type thing right here that has a little message in it. To do that, we're going to use Bootstrap Alerts, and this is what they're going to end up looking like, something like this. I'm going to use success and warning for mine. Success for the ones that are successful, and this for the ones that are errors. You might use the red one if you like. That's entirely up to you, doesn't matter to me. But these are the two that I'm going to be using right now. I might add danger later if it's something that's very dangerous or very breaking or something like that. I don't know. We'll have to get to that. So as with other Bootstrap things, I'm just going to copy and paste. Let's get the, the warning alert, because that's the only one we're using right now. Copy and paste that into our view. Right now it is in the navbar partial. Down at the very bottom, I'm going to paste it over that and make this say message. Save, and now let's try and go to comics/new again. Let me get this cool thing. Now note that this goes across the entirety of the screen. Some of you may like that. I personally don't care for that. I want it to be smaller, which we'll fix in a minute. But another thing I want to note is if I refresh the page, it's still there. If I go back to comics, it's still there. Even if we don't have a message inside of Flash, it's still there. And we'll handle that in just a minute too. So there are several things we're about to handle, so just keep that in mind. We're making progress though, so this already looks better. So right now, we're having all of our messages in yellow, whether it's a good message, a bad message, all of them are in yellow. But we still want to have success messages in green as well. So therefore we need to add some logic to differentiate between the types of messages and show different HTML based on those. To do this, we're going to go back into app.js, and instead of just passing messages, res.local.message, we're going to pass two separate things. We're going to pass an error message and a success message. And you can name these whatever you want. Request.flash passing an error. And then the next one is res.locals.successMessage equals request.flash passing in success. So let's save this. Everything's going to break again. So if we try and refresh this page, it's all going to be borked. Nothing works. So we're going to have to go into our nav bar and fix this. So instead of doing message, we want this to be error message. And then we're going to duplicate this, have this to be alert success, and instead of error message, it's going to be success message. Now let's save this. These are both going to be rendered to the screen now, as I'm sure you already figured out. Let's try to go to comics/new, and we still get that, but this is still rendered to the screen. The reason is that we're rendering them both without any conditional logic in there, so we need to come into here and add that conditional logic. So let's just make a nice scriptlet tag if, and strangely enough, we have to check two things, not just one. If success message exists and success message length is greater than 0. The reason for that is sometimes success message will be created and there will just be nothing in it, and then this will render with nothing. So we want to make sure that it has at least one item in it. So if so, render that. We also want to do if error message and error message length is greater than 0. And then cut and paste this inside. Fix indentation. Fix this indentation. Alright, so save. Now let's refresh the page. Now neither of them are showing up, but if I go to comics/new, this one will show up. If I refresh the page, it goes away. So that is what we want. That's how that works. That's exactly how we like it. And it's important to note that the order of these conditionals matter. Anytime that you're checking if something exists and the length of it or a property off of that, because if you put this one first and it doesn't exist, then it'll throw an error. But you're checking if it exists first, and if this is false, it won't even check this one. So the order of these conditional statements matters. All right, the next thing I want to do is add a little button that will allow me to dismiss the alert if I want to. So if I go to comics/new, I want to be able to add a button here that I can click and get rid of this thing. And I also want to make it so that it doesn't take up the entirety of the screen. So there are a couple things I can do to do that. They're both relatively simple. First thing is I'm going to put a div here that a class equals container, and I'm going to give it a margin top. And I'm going to put those inside of it, because if you remember, container is the part of Bootstrap. So if you remember, container is the part of Bootstrap that adds the little line things on the side, the little space on the side. So by wrapping that in container, fix that, we are going to be doing that. So let's go and refresh comics/new. There we go. That's a much better little thing. I like how it's margin top right here is offset a little bit so it doesn't look like it's slammed up against the nav bar. Now I want to add a little X right here that will let me dismiss this. Fortunately, this is part of Bootstrap. So we come down looking for dismissing. Here we go. Using the alert JavaScript plugin, it's possible to dismiss the inline alert. Be sure you've loaded the alert plugin or the compiled Bootstrap JavaScript. If you're building it from source, we don't care about that. Add a dismiss button and the .alert dismissible class. On the dismiss button, add that, and then to animate them, be sure to add the .fade and .show classes. So you'll notice down here in their description, they've added fade and show to the actual div itself. So we'll need to do that. But first, let's add this button. Copy. So inside of the alert, we're going to add the button. That is very ugly indentation. Let's fix it. All right, and I'm going to copy this and just paste it down here. I wonder why these are being silly. There we go. There we go. So let's save, refresh. Oops. Comics/new. Now we hit dismiss button. Let's see if it works. Click, and it goes away. But I didn't animate it because I did not add fade or show. So let's add those to this outer div right here. This needs to go over one, and these need to go over as well. Like that. Okay. So I want this to be fade and show. We want this one to be fade and show. Save. Let's go to comics/new to test. Here it is. Let's click, and it fades away. That's a lot prettier. That's a lot nicer user experience. And the last thing we have to do, as always, we shut down our server, get status so we can see all the things we've changed. So inside of app.js, what did we do? We have these little things over here on the side to show us. We added the flash messages to our res.locals. So git add app.js, git commit, add flash messages to res.locals. Let's check the status, and now we've got is logged in util. Let's see, I think I must have done that in the last video and forgot to save it. Yeah, so let's update that. Git add utils/is logged in, git commit, added or add flash error message. Git status. Git add. I'm just going to add all because there's one. That's the nav bar. Inside of the nav bar, git commit. And inside of the nav bar, we conditionally render flash messages. And we'll just leave it like that because we added the messages. There we go. Git status should be clean. So git push origin master. Git push Heroku master. And that's it for this video. In this video, we did a few things. We unborked our application by adding the flash messages to res.locals inside of app.js. That passes it to all of our templates in the exact same way that we did with the user variable. We then added styling to our flash messages using Bootstrap Alerts and updated our EJS to only show these message divs if the message exists and the length is greater than 0. And finally, we added a button to our flash divs so the user can dismiss them if they want to. In the next video, we're going to add a lot more flash messages. It's going to be all about adding a ton of flash messages so that our users get good feedback whenever they're using our application. As always, if you have any questions, let me know. I'll be happy to help. Thanks.